Hello, my name's Michelle Maidment and I'm a content solution developer at NCFE. I've previously spent 20 years as a teacher in special education, becoming a deputy head teacher for the latter part of that, as well as a SENDCo in mainstream school and also a local authority advisor supporting children with additional needs. And I'm here to talk to you today about the role of the SENDCo. Um, our aims and objectives for today, I'm going to talk about the statutory requirements that provisions have, the overview of the SENDCo role, key responsibilities that a SENDCo has, and any additional points to consider as well. This information here is taken from the SEND Code of Practice 2015, and it's section 6 and 7 that set out the specific duties for schools and further education. You can say that governing bodies of maintain mainstream schools, also proprietors of academy schools, and that includes free schools as well, they must ensure that there's a qualified teacher designated as SENDCo. Sometimes people will use people who aren't qualified teachers to do the day-to-day duties, but there must be someone overseeing it who is a qualified teacher. If the person appointed as SENDCo hasn't previously been in that role for a total period of more than 12 months, then up until now they've needed to achieve a national award in special educational needs coordination within 3 years of appointment. From September 2024, this is becoming an NPQ, a National Professional Qualification. There are currently 6 providers listed on the government website, which I've put the link there for you to refer to. And you just really need to have a look, see which is best for you regarding structure, delivery, etc., as there won't really be anyone to talk to about how courses have compared so far. So that's something to just bear in mind as you're moving forward into the new school year. The award has to be a postgraduate course. It's got to be accredited by a higher education provider, and it must be equivalent to at least 60 credits at the equivalent of masters at postgraduate study. Further education colleges and sixth form colleges, and also 16 to 19 academies and other independent specialist colleges, don't need to have a SENDCo as such. It's not quite the same as being in a school, but they do need to ensure there's a person who is named who has that oversight of SEND provision within their area to make sure that support is coordinated, and it is very similar to the role of SENDCo in schools. Private and independent training providers are a little bit different. There aren't any statutory duties on them to have a SENDCo enrol, but a lot of young people and adults with SEND might choose this route for them to do some further study. Currently, the latest figures I could find was, according to the Association of Employment and Learning Providers, 13% of people in training in these areas in between 2019 and 2020 did have some sort of SEND. So it's worth thinking about that. It could be beneficial to think about training for your staff. If you do have a learner struggling because of their SEND, and that can be identified, so they may have come to you with an EHCP, or it may be that they're just struggling in certain areas and actually you suspect that there might be some sort of learning difficulty or disability causing a barrier to their learning, then you need to think about where you might be able to get support because you don't have that qualified professional within your provision. So areas you could start with: local authority advisors and other professionals such as educational psychologists, etc., may come and support you. You can usually pay a one-off fee, or you may need to agree some sort of subject level agreement to get that support and advice. But it's worth thinking about, particularly if you need any specialist assessments. There's something called SENDIAS, which is the Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Information, Advice and Support Service. They should be in every local authority. It is statutory to have one, and they can be a good source of information. They are meant to be for parents and carers, but they are very open to chatting to anyone who might need their support. Local schools and colleges can be good, particularly if a young person's come to you who's recently left, then their previous school or college might offer some support as part of transition planning and may be happy to support you for a little bit longer as well. There is a government funded programme running from 2022 to 2025, which if you Google Universal SEND Services or Education and Training Foundation, you should be able to find there. There are various ways of finding support for young people. And then also you can think about specialist organisations, thinking about places like the Autism Education Trust, but any not-for-profit organisation or charity, they can offer support in specific areas sometimes. So it's worth thinking about contacting them if you have something specific. Just an overview of the SENDCo role. They do have a really important role to play at a high level, and they should be involved in determining strategic development of SEND policy and provision within the school college. They are most effective in that role if they're part of the school leadership team. I know sometimes this can be difficult, but if they're going to have the authority to be able to make sure that things are carried out for students with SEND, then it is really helpful if they are part of the leadership team. They have day-to-day responsibility for the general operation of anything to do with SEND in the school, so making sure what you see in the policy is carried out, and then coordinating the provision for individual pupils, so making sure they have support in the right place, whether that is a teaching assistant or some sort of intervention. It's making sure that everything is happening that we say is going to happen for particular students. And the school really does need to ensure that the SENDCo has sufficient time and resources to carry out these functions. It can be difficult with finances and teaching commitments, but it really is useful. The SENDCo should have time to do this if you want them to work effectively. They should offer professional guidance to colleagues and also work closely with staff, parents and other agencies. Working as a SENDCo, I always saw myself as an advocate for SEND children and their families, and making sure that continuing professional development is delivered to staff, or even surgeries with colleagues where they might put aside an hour a week after school for colleagues to come along to make sure that they're supporting them the best way they can, they're using their knowledge to do that and their experience, and making sure that quality first teaching is available in school and that staff understand SEND needs. It's really important to listen to parents and carers. A lot of your time as a SENDCo can be taken up with that and ensuring their voices are heard. And also liaison with external agencies to really ensure that a child or young person is getting that holistic approach and ensuring the best outcomes for them. SENDCo should be aware of the provision in the local offer. Again, it's mandatory for every local authority to have a local offer in place, and this should provide details of services available to families, and the SENDCo needs to know what's around, and then they can work with professionals and families to ensure that the child or young person is receiving support not only in school but outside of school through having the opportunity to access appropriate clubs, and really just being able to do what any other child of their age and ability would be able to do. So it's very important that they are aware of the local offer. Some key responsibilities. SENDCos need to advise on the deployment of the delegated budget and any other resources and make sure that pupils' needs are met effectively. Ensuring the budget is benefiting those with SEND. Now that can be direct, it can be having a teaching assistant supporting the child or interventions that they access, but it can also be indirect. So it may be that the school decides to employ an extra teacher to reduce a class size, and then that allows more targeted quality first teaching, and it may be that that becomes quite a small class that gets that real targeted intervention. It should also tie in with your SEND policy and your information report. So every school needs their SEND information report, which lays out how children and young people with SEND are supported. So SENDCo should be really involved with that. As far as equality goes, we have to make sure that children and young people aren't disadvantaged because of disability and that they still have access to opportunities open to other students. They also need to access support for things like tests and exams. So it's really important that you think about that for access arrangements and other adjustments that they might need. It is important for further education colleges that they don't require a SEND information report, but it is important that they publish how they comply with the public sector equality duty and eliminate discrimination. SENDCo should be a key point of contact with a range of people, so it's really important to have that. And even if duties are then delegated to the class teacher or tutor to be that point of contact, it should be that every child, young person with SEND has that. So it could be with parents and carers, and particularly around transition. Transitions are probably one of the most important parts of the role for a SENDCo, because the success of a child or young person in their next placement can really depend upon how that transition is handled. So making sure that they're given the time to speak to potential providers of education as the child or young person moves on, and that all options are explored, is a really important part of the role as well. Um, EHCP reviews are statutory to be carried out annually, and they should be arranged with the relevant parties invited. And you may need to have them more frequently if a child or young person's needs are complex or there is a change in circumstances which might be raising issues. It's important that all the documentation is up to date, so everyone who comes into contact with the person with the EHCP can offer the support needed to achieve the best outcomes as well. Some additional points to consider around the nature of the role. Not many people understand the SENDCo role fully unless they've done it themselves, so it can be quite an isolating role. There isn't anyone else in school that does the same job, so to have the chance to network with other SENDCos and share good practice is really quite key. So the SENDCo really does benefit from attending local network meetings, and if there aren't any, see if your SENDCo can maybe start one up, because other people will be feeling the same, and it can be so beneficial being able to work together. Because of finances being tight in a lot of areas now, then some SENDCos work across multiple sites. So it is useful that you could have one SENDCo working across a number of different schools. Academy chains often do this, but they could work equally for a local network of schools as well, particularly if you have small primaries, and that can be a way of making sure the SENDCo has time to do their role without having an impact on your teaching commitment, because it can be one SENDCo who works half a day in each school if you've got that sort of network available. Delivering continuing professional development is really important, not just for staff, but that the SENDCo is able to keep up to date with current good practice and policy as well. So really ensure that your SENDCo has time to be able to access training themselves as well as training staff. And then you should have a SEND governor, and the SENDCo should have strong links with the SEND governor. They would generally work with the SENDCo to understand and monitor practice and feedback anything to the government body that is pertinent. SENDCo really can be quite a challenging role. It's a very rewarding one, but it's good to have some mentoring or support from leadership as well as a SENDCo, because quite often you're dealing with difficult situations. You have frustrated families or frustrated staff who may be finding the behaviour or the learning difficulties of a child or young person quite challenging. So it's really helpful to have some support there in the background. and it can be useful to talk through any issues. So it is something to consider when you're thinking about the well-being of your SENDCo as well. So thank you for listening. I hope that's been useful, and please feel free to leave some feedback by scanning the QR code and completing the form.